Welcome. Hello.
Hello there. How are you?
We're good. Feel free to unmute and we can chat up a little bit until we get everybody into the room. Thanks for joining us today. That is so quiet. I hear there's a terrible ice storm in the northern part of the country. Anybody today? Although I guess if you are, maybe you're not here.
No, but there is a terrible ice storm here. I'm in New York City, and I'm here because I can't get outside.
We just had snow, just tons and tons of snow, another 5 inches last night.
Holy cow.
Toronto. Yeah.
So what are you up to by now?
Well, it comes and goes. It comes and goes. So now I measured by my table outside, and today I'm only at 5 inches because it melted all yesterday. So I can still get outside.
Lynn, where do you live?
Toronto.
We only got an inch here in Detroit.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I had 9 1/4 yesterday.
Oh, aren't you lucky?
Yeah, I'm gonna go snowshoeing today. Yay!
I got about 6 inches in New Hampshire, and they're expecting another 5 or so more. Still snowing. Keeps changing texture. I ran upstairs because I kept hearing something scrabbling around, and it turned out just to be the snow hitting the window.
It's an odd feeling.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we're praying for rain in Florida.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we're having a heat wave in Florida. It's 82 out right now.
Oh my God.
It's way too warm for this time of year.
Yeah. Yeah,
We
just
just had 3 days of rain. Virginia.
Well,
I'm in central Mexico, and the weather is kind of beautiful every day. It's like in the
nice.
70s. I'm sleeping with my windows open and a blanket. The sun is shining, the breeze.
Can we all come visit?
How much? Oh, it's a beautiful day in Exeter, May, which is
how much-
day, and it's
Time to mute.
snowing. I'm muting. It's heavenly here.
yeah, well, we'll be down.
Let's go. Yeah.
Awesome.
We'll be down. Okay, well, today we are talking about the fourth cornerstone of creativity, and I'd like to ask you to mute yourselves now. And we'll use the protocol that we always use in these discussions. If you'd like to make a comment, it really works best if you raise your hand. And that way we keep we likened that to the talking stick in one of our recent conversations, that raising the hand gives everybody a chance to speak in some semblance of less chaotic than it might otherwise be. So I don't think there are any other, this is being recorded. I can't think of any other ground rules. Can you?
Nope.
Great. It was a fast month.
Yeah, I know.
Well,
Review just quick review.
sure. Let's review for anyone who might not have been here, or it helps me. Sometimes I get
Me too.
mixed up. So the 4 cornerstones of creativity are curiosity, and that is linked to I link that to the child archetype, because we all have that. On some level, we were all born with a sense of curiosity or a capacity for curiosity. And as creative human beings, cultivating that capacity for curiosity, say that 3 times fast, is essential to staying open to the things that are around you that could be discovered and used for either inspiration or for learning a new process, so that sort of thing. And it also helps because when you're curious about other people. One thing I love about this, which is why we always start in this informal way, is that I'm always curious where people have come from and where you are right now and what it's like where you are. And, I think sometimes people think it's trite to start by any conversation by talking about the weather, but it is something that we all have in common. And it's not the same everywhere. So I suppose it's defensible from that standpoint. The second cornerstone of creativity is clarity. And we've talked about the fact that when you are clear about your preferences and working on being clearer about the choices that you make, you are then leaning into what I think of as alignment. And alignment is when what you love to do and what you are good at doing, or how you want to spend your time. You don't have to be a master at it, but when those things are converging in some way. And when you're clearer about your preferences, then that also helps you to recognize or discern who you'd like to spend your time with. We all have to spend time with people we probably wouldn't choose, based on sometimes living in communal situations or working a job with people who were not necessarily chosen just because they'd be your greatest allies. You're all thrown in it together. But the time that we have that we think of as the negotiable time, where we can choose how we want to spend that time, is that much more delightful and rewarding when we can be clear about the people that we want to be with, and when we actually seek out people who are like-minded and then cultivate the relationships that we have with them. So that brings us to the fourth cornerstone, and that is confidence. And confidence is what happens really as a result of the other three cornerstones. So you're curious, and that leads to some clarity. Clarity can lead you to a newfound or strengthened community. And when your community is around you, and you've got your gang, your posse, your tribe, whatever you want to refer to it as, your friends, your partners, art partners, then that helps you, at least it does me, to feel more confident, because I know I'm not alone, because I know that I can trust the people who are part of my community to be honest with me. And when perhaps it's something that's a hard conversation to have, then we think about having that conversation in a way where we're confident that it will be a loving, supportive conversation. But I think the confidence then ripples out into lots of other things that you do. And I'll just say one more thing, and then I'm going to stop talking because I've had my 10,000 words. One thing that occurred to me as I was thinking about this is that I want to be really clear that when I'm talking about confidence, I am not necessarily talking about success all the time. Because I think it's easy to go along on kind of a surface area with certain, you're just on the surface if what you're thinking is that the people who seem most confident to you are the most successful people. I think it's true that when you're confident, you've got a better shot at success, probably. But I also think that confidence is an attitude that you embrace and want to live into, because it helps you handle the things that are not all that successful. And so I just wanted to add that into the mix before we opened the conversation, or before you're very sweet to let me go first.
No, thanks for recapping the first three in the introduction. But I think I'm going to turn it right back at you.
Oh, no.
Because I had a question. I just, you've had an incredible career as an artist. And so have you always been confident in producing artwork and sharing your artwork and teaching? And what has been your own experience with confidence?
Well, you know what that makes me think? I wonder if there is anyone that you could ask that question of, and they would say, oh yeah, I've always been confident.
Yeah. I don't think so. In my own thinking about my confidence, I don't think it's a state that you reach where you just are never not confident again.
Well, or it's actually, there's stages, because I would say right now, 5-year-old Zira is incredibly confident.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, that kid thinks she could, and isn't that a great start to have?
Yeah.
I mean, as I've said many times, I loved it when she held up the picture she just painted and said, and the crowd went wild, because that's the kind of confidence we all wish we had.
Yeah.
But life takes that confidence away, or tempers it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then maybe what we're talking about at this stage is what it's going to take, or the process that we're all in of reclaiming that confidence.
Mm-hmm.
Because no, I was not always confident. As a matter of fact, I thought I would, the imposter syndrome, we've talked about that.
Yeah.
I don't have a degree in art. I have a degree in religion
Yeah.
and psychology. I felt like the biggest fake in the world. And
Yeah.
then there were experiences I had where I was dismissed, and that only underscored the lack of confidence that I had and why I could justify being less than confident.
Mm-hmm.
Because in my mind, it was only a matter of time before I got booted right out the door.
But you showed up anyway.
But that's part of it, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you show up anyway.
Yeah.
And also, it helps to have a huge rebel archetype, which I have, and everybody's got a little bit of rebel. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to move away from their parents and have an adult life. But my rebel was like flicking off anybody who told me I couldn't do something.
Right.
So I might feel really inconfident. Is that a word? Unconfident? I didn't feel very confident inside.
Yeah.
But I wasn't going to let it stop me, because the part of me that wanted to prove that they were wrong was stronger than the part of me that didn't believe I could. And I think that's a weird paradox, probably.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I think I'm just, over the past couple years, I've entered this shift in my life where I'm realizing that I think I have been living my life based on like shoulds and expectations of the other, which I don't even know who that actually is, instead of being vulnerable and sharing parts of me that would include, artwork or writing or whatever, because I've just been completely paralyzed by seeing the incredible things other humans are doing, in any arena, right? There's always examples of just incredible artwork, whatever it is. And I think now I'm only beginning to realize that anyone who has put a creation into the world and shared part of themselves has overcome or dealt with the exact same feelings that I'm feeling now, or have been feeling, or kind of been dealing with. There's plenty of interviews with, Maya Angelou is an incredible example that I've seen in a few different podcasts I've listened to about imposter syndrome and self-doubt. And, at the end of her career, she was still saying, like, I'm going to be found out, that I'm a fake and a fraud. And that's just, how is that even possible?
Yeah.
So I don't know, it helps me to think about how we all share this experience of feeling like an imposter, and to kind of show up anyway. And because really, what's the alternative? Never producing the things you want to produce and share with the world.
Don't even try.
Yeah. And that seems way worse than overcoming the fear. Or just dealing with the fear, like holding it and having it, but still doing it anyway.
Yeah. Well, somebody said, Ronnie, face the fear and do it anyway.
Yeah.
My mantra, that's my mantra too, right there.
Yeah. And it's actually, there's some quote, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it's not about conquering the fear. It's about acknowledging it.
Yeah.
And that it's never really going to go away. It's always going to be there. Maybe it'll be minimized.
Yeah.
But just doing it anyway.
Yeah.
So
there was a beautiful poem shared on the creative strength training. I think it was on the members page yesterday, that was essentially the idea that failure showed up again at the door, and failure was sort of threatening. And the narrator is saying, and so really in the poem, which is beautiful, and I should have printed it out so I could read it. I didn't think about it till right now, but basically the idea was that the narrator embraced the failure so that it could become a friend. And they went down and literally failure baptized the narrator, and the narrator sitting at the end looking into the sun and contemplating this. But I think that basic idea is the beautiful idea, is that the failures are only, that's just one little part.
But also, how do we become more resilient and stronger
Yeah,
without them?
Yeah, well,
Like,
that's right.
You know, I don't know. So in my own journey, I've tried to reframe the risk of being vulnerable or sharing with, you know, like, what's the worst that could happen? Someone, I don't know, like
Well,
the whole world's just like, that's terrible. Don't ever do that again.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Well,
And then that's just not gonna happen.
it isn't
It's
going to
just not
happen.
gonna happen.
And even if it did, you know, I guarantee if you haven't said that to one of your daughters at least once already over something, probably a safety issue,
Yeah.
you know, you're right. It's just a learning thing. Shall we see what Barbara's thinking?
Sure.
Barbara.
Oh, dear. This might not be the right place to raise this issue. Maybe I should have raised it in community. And I'm talking about your circle when you've got a critique. You're hopefully among friends. People are kind, but they also want to tell you the truth. I've been criticized many times because I just don't lie. Like my sister will say, I want to buy this dress. And I'll say, yeah, you know, my attitude is I want to save you money, not, you know, wearing something that looks terrible on you. But how do you, in a situation, and I've been to school and I've gone through official critiques and whatever, you want to help the person, you want to develop their confidence, you don't want to shoot them down. They value your opinion, hopefully. You want to bolster them up and give them confidence, but how do you maneuver that truthfully without hurting them sometimes? Because you don't want to, you know, knock them down.
Well, I will say one thing that has worked for me, because I've been in that situation a lot, Barbara. And there are three things that are variables that I think have to be considered. One of them is the other people who are in the rooms. A lot of the time when I can see that somebody's going down the wrong track and I'm in a group setting with them, I don't bring it up in front of the whole group. And even if you were in a critique group and someone obviously was struggling and you thought you saw what might help them, I'm not sure I would necessarily say it in the critique group. I think I would be more inclined to wait to a time when I either had a one-on-one conversation with them or in, you know, writing to them in an email later, hey, I was thinking about this and I wondered if you had considered doing this. And the second thing that I always have to think about is, which is hard. This is why if you're really doing this, it's almost sacred, because you're looking for the most loving, kind way you can say what you have to say. And actually, Zen and I were talking about this before we began the conversation today. The other thing, one of the things that I think has to do with confidence is that we need to do our best to separate what we make from who we are. And so when I'm working with somebody and I think their work isn't all that great really, and it could be improved, I try to think of the kindest words I can use. And sometimes I even point out that we're talking about a piece right now that could be improved, but we need to make sure that we recognize it's a piece separate from who we are. And then I think the other thing, sometimes the other thing that I have to think about is whether the person is capable of hearing me at all. In other words, I think it's easy to be so sure that I should be straightening out everybody, that I'm not going to be able to withhold my opinion because I have one. And I'm just going to give it, by God, when really it isn't going to help them. And if they have just a few more weeks to kind of work on what they're working on, maybe something in them will shift and they'll have a more of a willingness to hear what I have to say. So I think timing has a lot to do with it. And that's the best shot I could give you. What do you think?
I guess I'm thinking about community, and there's probably situations where maybe you're in a critique where you didn't necessarily seek out that specific community, and there's not the same level of trust as there might be in another group. But they're really, for I think an honest, productive critique, there needs to be mutual trust between the person being critiqued and the person giving. Because as the person being critiqued, you have to trust that they have their best, that the other person has your best interest at heart. And as the person giving, you need to trust. I guess the same thing.
Yeah, and that's a certain level of confidence. So I don't think we necessarily, you started, Barbara, this by saying that you thought maybe this should have been talked about in community, but the fact is these four aspects of how we approach creativity are all commingled. And so we can't really talk about solid community without bringing confidence into it, and vice versa, I think. But I think there's a certain amount of wisdom that is really hard to embrace. And it's only been easier for me as I got older. And I've, in the past 18 months, there have been a couple of instances where I totally screwed up. And it was with family members. It wasn't with students or people that I'm working with as I'm working with CST. But I definitely saw that I had a tendency to barge in there and just tell people what I thought and what they should do when they weren't even asking me to.
That's something I was just thinking about, actually setting the expectation of how much of a critique or what type of feedback you're looking for when you're in that situation seems really important, because if you are at the end of a piece and you're not going to continue to spend that much time on it, but you just, maybe setting those expectations is important.
Yeah. Well, okay, so here's a story that really happened so long ago. I think I can tell it. I was working with a critique group, and I'd been there twice, and it came up that one of the members in their group had left the group and was angry with them. This was before I ever got involved. And the reason that happened, that break in the group, which had obviously really shaken the group and challenged their level of trust, was that this woman had made this full quilt, and when it was finished and she took it to the critique, every single member saw a penis. And no one had the courage to say it to her. And she entered the piece in a non-juried show. And when the show was hung and she walked into the gallery, she saw the penis for the first time. And she was so angry.
I would be too.
Because nobody trusted her reaction enough. Can you imagine how any of us would feel? I mean, I think it's kind of hilarious, but that's because I'm confident.
Well, that's because you're not her.
No, maybe so. Anyhow, believe it or not, that seems like a ludicrous example, but it's a true story. And it just proves that on some level, we have to be willing to lovingly go where we're sometimes afraid to go, to a point that might almost seem radical, because it's not to go there is the opposite of love and wise advice, I guess, for lack of a better way to characterize it. Cynthia, you've been nodding your head. Would you like to add some comments?
Yes. Yeah, I'm finding this discussion very dynamic, and my mind keeps going back to the different principles, and that the first, when I raised my hand to begin with, what I was thinking was that beautiful story of your granddaughter and your daughter, Zena, just her ability to just be who she is in the world at her age. And it made me think how, it seems like all of the people in this group are women, and that there is something about the way being big in the world is often taken away from us. And, that confidence we have to just take up space and this is who I am, or, and I can speak for myself that certainly that happened, and that I love being older now, coming back into more parts of myself. And it was just lovely hearing a little bit about your background, that you were a religion and psychology major, because that's always been I have a degree. I'm a psychologist, and that's how I make my money. But I've always had this artistic imperative. And now that I'm older, I'm letting myself do it more, and hence joining this program. And that the confidence, sort of reclaiming my confidence around that, and just loving that piece about that confidence as an attitude, and an inner experience, really. And I can feel that when I say that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like reclaiming.
I love your glasses.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, really.
Well, and Kristen's made the real point of the story I told, that let's see, no, Ronnie, it's funny, the story that I told, but it was also unkind of her friend. And I think that's the important takeaway, is that we don't want our friends to look foolish when they're out in the world. And when we're reclaiming ourselves, we're also reclaiming, back to what Cynthia said. I think that's also a component of, too often women have been thrown into positions where they've been in competition with each other. And I think one of the things that we reclaim by choice, and sometimes just because we grow into it when we're older, we reclaim the connections that we choose and want to have to, in this case, other women. And that means we've got their back. And that means you would never let your friend or someone that you cared about, or even someone that you hardly knew, you wouldn't ever want them to be in a position where they were embarrassed, or where they had to take a hit at their confidence because you weren't willing to step up and be there for them.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting thing. Teresa.
Hi. Last night, I was talking to the president of our library board. I'm a member of the library, on the library board. And for our fundraiser, I sewed a couple of baskets, and I made a couple of my Silk Fusion journal covers and stuck them in the basket. And we were talking. And, I had mentioned, I guess I need to start thinking about what we're going to do for our next fundraiser. We chatted a little bit more. And then she said something that kind of threw me for a loop. She said, I really enjoy talking to an artist like you. And I'm like, me? It was just it was a boost to my ego. I mean, I don't think anybody has ever actually said you're an artist. And that was kind of like kind of eye-opening almost, it was really an interesting and really an ego boost. Mm-hmm. So, although I still have trouble kind of assimilating it completely, but to have somebody that is not a close friend or a confidant or anything like that, just somebody that I know once a month, just come out and say that, mm-hmm. It was really uplifting.
Mm-hmm. Good for you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
There's a comment. I'd love to have the confidence to show up as boldly as Lizzo.
Oh yeah, I love her.
Lizzo was a big influence on the 5-year-old.
Yeah,
wasn't she?
She loves Lizzo. Yeah, she does. But actually, even Liz, I follow Lizzo on Instagram, and she's been really vulnerable about dealing with just critics and mean people and comments. And she has low days, but she's just showing up every day.
She's got a big rebel.
Oh yeah, I love her.
Yeah, cool. Yvonne, glad you're here.
Hi. Just got out of my pajamas. Lazy day here. I'm not confident, and this is a good confidence session, that I'm going to ask this question or make this comment correctly. I'm not sure about the words I should use. Is there an overconfidence check-in that we should sometimes use? I have some friends that they appear incredibly confident, but they seem to be really blind or avoid new creative opportunities. Like their work is always the same and they seem very negative about anything that strays off the path. So is this something that we risk running into? Like should the day ever arrive that we feel we're really confident? Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Like, should you be offering them?
No. I mean, I'm not going to, they're whatever they are, but is there a chance that we might be so confident about an approach that we're taking that we lack the foresight to see that maybe it's not the best decision to make, or maybe we're missing an opportunity? I think that's the thing. I hate to miss an opportunity because I'm so entrenched in this is going to work, this is perfect, I don't need to go anywhere else.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I think that might be one of those areas that's kind of a paradox, because I don't think confidence is necessarily, I don't think having blinders on is necessarily a good way to forge true confidence. I didn't say that very well.
We're all having confidence problems with our words, but blinders, could confidence give you blinders? I mean, you use that word, and I think that's kind of where I was going with that. How do you recognize when you're putting blinders on yourself? Because I see it in my friends, and I'm thinking, how do you avoid doing that to yourself?
I have a feeling that just you asking that question is an indicator that you're probably never going to reach that state, because you have that awareness of it. Even you see it in other people, so you would probably be aware of it in yourself. I know some people that like that too, and I don't know if they would have the self-awareness to, I don't know, see that as an issue.
Yeah.
And maybe they're not confident. Maybe they just look confident, but they're really not.
Well, that's sort of the direction I'm going with thinking about this. I'm thinking that confidence has, at least for me, it just seems that it has a built-in component of being open to new ideas and other approaches, and changes in what you're doing that you're willing to at least try on for size before you decide it's not going to work or it's a bad idea. And my experience of people who keep doing the same thing over and over isn't really because of confidence as much as it's because it's a safety zone.
Yeah.
But I can't say that for sure. I'm still thinking about it. Lauren, your ideas?
Hello, thank you. Just in terms of thinking about confidence. So I am a relatively new quilter / artist. That this is not how I spent my career. And in order to really show our work, it involves submitting it to competitions. And even though I'm a new quilter, I feel that I've had my share of rejections, which is hard. And, I guess maybe there's a fine line between believing in yourself, feeling clear about your vision, and then getting that rejection from the show judges or whoever. And but I want to say that last year I took an online class with Katie PM. I have a hard time with her last name. And at the end of it, when she sort of gave us overall critiques, she wrote, "I'm impressed with your work." She didn't say it's beautiful. She didn't say, it's good or it's bad or whatever. As far as I know, she's impressed with my audacity to even do it. I don't know what she's impressed with, but when I have to lick my wounds because of a rejection, it's very helpful to just think of that from somebody that I admire. A comment like that helps.
Yeah, and I would only say two things to that, Lauren. One is that sometimes the reason you're getting rejected isn't necessarily because the work isn't good work. It's that the venue that you've submitted it to isn't the right kind of exhibition for what you make.
Yeah.
And when that's true, and I don't know whether that's true right now or not, but I know that I've seen that be a problem in the past. And in that case, the blow to the confidence meant that sometimes people were thinking of throwing out what they were doing, which was really good, so that they could fit somebody else's mold, when in fact, they just needed to look for a different place to show the work, to submit the work, frankly. But the other thing I think about that is that if that happened to someone, not necessarily you, on a regular basis, where you were consistently not getting into exhibitions and you didn't know why, then I would always suggest that that the person who's having that issue look for someone whose opinion they trust, who knows something. You're not going to ask your dad, unless he's a famous artist, but you're going to look for somebody who's knowledgeable and also balanced, and not too opinionated, because that could be a problem as well. But someone like that might be able to give some advice, or just offer you an opinion, and just that might be food for thought that would either make you, I'm just using you because it's easier than trying to generalize it. That would either make you feel better about what you're doing, or it might give you some insight into what you could be doing differently. And either of those things would be workable. You'd have something there. And frankly, I'm not sure we talked about this much when we did our kind of overview of what CST involves, but every month there's an opportunity for members to submit work for critique. And I look at it and I give I usually ask the person, because I think this is so important, I ask the person what kind of help they want or what they think the problem is. And then that's all I address. I don't give you my opinion. I don't tell you whether I love the work or I hate the work. I don't say anything. I just try to address your concern about the piece you're working on. And I think that when other people watch those, a lot of the time it's very helpful. So you might keep that in mind as another option for anyone who's part of the program.
Yes, thank you. That was an excellent answer. And I also want to say, Jane, that what drew me to you, and the first way that I ever even heard your name, was because the SACWA critiques that happen periodically, they use your protocol. And I just thought it was excellent. And I started thinking, who is this Jane Dunewald?
There you go. New. I'm glad you're here. Thanks. Angie.
Hi, I found the poem on failure.
Okay.
Would you like me to read it?
I'd love for you to read it.
It was posted by Nancy Dasenbrock. My old friend, failure, showed up at my door dressed like it was attending a somber wake. Pressed dark suit, mirrored sunglasses, slick polished shoes. So I gave failure a bright red rose for its lapel and a glass of white champagne, and then kissed it on its pale cheek. Failure stared at me for a moment before it finally spoke with the growl. "Aren't you afraid of me?" "No," I explained to failure that its arrival wasn't the end of my story, but simply a plot twist. I reminded failure that it wasn't there to preside over my funeral. It had come to baptize me. Oh, then failure took off its coat and walked me down to the lake and laid me out prone in the clear water, and I felt something inside of me become brand new. When it was over, failure pulled me to my feet and hugged me to my bones while whispering into my ears its 2-word sermon: "Now, grow." We said our goodbyes knowing that we'd see each other again soon. I left failure.
That's good. Thank you.
You're welcome. I posted it on the chat.
Thank you very
Okay.
much for doing that, Angie.
Yeah.
My research skills.
Thank you. Which are admired, and I'm glad you're confident in them. Pamela.
Thank you, Jane. And Jane and Zena, thank you for making this presentation. Talking it through is much more helpful than reading about it. And I've also been struggling with finding strength and confidence to call myself an artist. And I was wondering if maybe you could talk about some techniques and ways that that you think could be helpful to build that creative confidence. And one of the things that came to mind, I'd be curious what you thought of it, is, the old adage, fake it till you make it. And I'm wondering, is that the same thing as showing up and trying, even though, but I have a very big imposter syndrome thing. And so I wasn't quite sure, how does one build creative confidence?
I always had a lot of trouble with the fake it till you make it saying. There's something about it that doesn't feel authentic, but that's like the whole point of it, I guess. So I don't know, as I get older and I'm dealing with my own imposter syndrome, I'm leaning into it more, I think. But I don't know, I like to reframe it as not necessarily faking it, but something else. I don't know if I actually have the words yet, but
Well, here's one I use.
sorry. No, go ahead.
There's something about it, that phrase, that, I don't know. Anyway, I prefer hope is believing in spite of the evidence and watching the evidence change. Which means, at least the way I interpret that, is that we hope that we're artists in the beginning, but we don't know yet for sure. But we keep showing up and we keep putting in the time and we keep talking about it. And that's how you look back a year later, next year at the end of your first year of CST, Pamela, you look back and you think, well, damn, I am an artist. Because you were here and you did the things that we all talk about doing. And hopefully you'll have time to pursue the abstraction sort of explorations that we're going to propose every month. And you'll be able to join some of the Wednesday meetings where we talk about all of this. And there might be an area of interest where you really, I don't know what it is, stick figures. You can join the topical stick figure group where everybody just draws stick figures all year. And they get more and more elaborate, and pretty soon they have wardrobes, and pretty soon they have narratives. And at the end of the year, we put it all in a movie. Who knows what a topical group can do if it sets its mind to it. But the point is that each of those is an example of where we show up and we do certain kinds of things that are part of what I think of as a daily practice. And that's what eventually allows us to look back and see that, yeah, we might have been unsteady in the beginning, but we grew into it and now it's a perfect fit.
A thought I'm having about the phrase fake it until you make it is, it implies that you make it. Like, when is it that you make it? When you reach that state, you still have to decide internally that you've made it. Right? So I don't know, I think some of us could fake it forever, know, and
well, fake it almost. We should be done with the phrase in a minute, but it just also seems to me that faking it implies that somehow it's not legitimate.
Yeah. Nat wrote, trust it until you feel it. I love that.
There you go.
That feels authentic to me. And I think there was another, Brenda wrote, does confidence come with repetition sometimes? And I think that's so important, because I'm just beginning to share some of my artwork publicly, and that's only like within Facebook. It's not like I'm showing or exhibiting. But I think sometimes, at least for me, I get in this mindset of like, I have to just create this confidence on my own internally, and then I'm confident. But I think I'm realizing I need to kind of continue to take risks and share things. And then I get some of that external validation that's really important. The community and the people that see you and see what you're doing and appreciate it. Like the comment before about someone calling you an artist, I think that's incredibly important.
Mm-hmm.
And we might be creating confidence in ourselves, and that's laying a groundwork. But I don't know, I think it's really important to get the feedback from
Well, it
other people.
validates it.
Right.
When you're talking about it with other people, it validates it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know if we have like specific steps, but I would say continuing to share, continuing to make artwork, because for the longest time I thought I wanted to be an artist. I have all of these ideas, but I wasn't actually making anything. And so you have to keep producing and growing and making too.
Well, one thing for sure, you're never going to be an artist.
That's the best advice, Nina. Thank you. Showing up. I think that's really, really helpful. Show up and just do it every day, as often as you can.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Linda Wingrove, glad you're here.
Hi. I'd like to go back a little bit to the conversation about critiques and how to present critiques so that you're not killing someone's confidence. And I'm speaking from the point of view of a person who definitely lacks confidence. I have very little confidence. And what I find happens to me a lot of times is when I'm in a group and I feel that I trust the people in the group and I know that they have my best interests at heart, when all I ever get is good feedback, after a while, I don't trust it, because I feel like they're so concerned about hurting my feelings or not saying something negative to me or, hurting my confidence in some way, that I feel like I don't know if they're really telling me the truth. And I think, I don't know how you maneuver that as a person who's giving critique, but I think it's important that you do tell the truth, that you don't always try to just find something positive to say just to build up someone's confidence. Does that make sense? I mean, I've found that in like some of the groups that I've been involved in CST, that we sometimes, somebody will show something and it's like everyone has to find something, wonderful to say about it. And it's like after a while you feel like, well, are we just competing to see who can say the nicest thing? Or, can I trust that what people are saying is really accurate? Because I never heard them say anything negative. So, how do I know they're really telling the truth? And so I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there as, like, I don't know where that goes, but
yeah, I think that's a really good point, Linda. And I've certainly been in groups where that seemed to be happening too. And I think that, I think two things. The first thing I think is that sometimes when a critique is happening, it would perhaps go better if one of the ground rules was that the person who was showing work could say, I'm showing this. And I've said, generally in the past, I've said, make sure we know what you want from us. But I'm actually thinking now that maybe being a little more specific would be useful. So if someone was showing something, they could say, I finished this, or I'm working on this, but I'm concerned about whether how I did this works or doesn't work, instead of keeping it so general. And then the other comment I have off the top of my head is that I also have come to the conclusion that in a group where someone shows something and a lot of people are very positive about it, that when there's a limited amount of time in the particular discussion, that in the future, if I was in that kind of a situation as the leader, I would say, now we're going to look at Zena's work and take a few comments. But what I want to encourage all of you to get into the habit of doing within this group is, if you've seen something in the discussion that we have today, which is only 90 minutes, and you want to be absolutely the best support you can be, then take a few minutes after the meeting and write your comments to the person whose work we looked at today, so she has a record of the things that people had, so she has a one-on-one with you about what you thought about her work. I think that might be one way to keep it from turning into feeling like it's just a bunch of people making positive comments about another person's work and everybody trying to find something nice to say. So I don't know whether that's a strategy I would use in the future, but I've been kind of thinking about it in the context of all the meetings that we have coming up this year. And also in the context of writing guidelines for the topical groups that are being revised. And so within the context of CST, that's one thing I'm thinking. But I also think that sometimes we have to look at ourselves and recognize that maybe, and I don't know, I'm not quite sure how to work on this kind of confidence in the time that we have here today, but I will throw out that I think sometimes someone's chosen to be so insecure about their work that even when they keep getting positive comments, they just refuse to believe them. And at some point, it would be better just to surrender to the fact that these are people who care about you and they are not all lying to you. You know?
True.
Easier said than done. I said I couldn't solve it this afternoon.
I guess, you know, what maybe kind of bothers me is that it feels like it's not a very constructive use of time sometimes, that everybody just needs to take a turn and say their, you know, give their compliments. I wish that maybe people would limit their comments to, you know, if they've been affected in some specific way by what they're looking at, and they have, you know, something really, you know, that it's affected their thinking in some way, or, you know, given them an insight or something. But sometimes it just gets to be a litany of people saying, oh, it's so wonderful, I really like it, it's really good, and you know,
that's helpful.
Yeah. I guess that's what I was.
So, but I have a feeling that sometimes that's because there hasn't been enough guidance. Like, I'm getting to be a better leader than I was before, whenever before was, all the time. And it's partly because of being in a lot of group settings and seeing this. But I think it would probably be helpful in any group setting to say, here are the kinds of things that will help the group learn from this and the whole group grow from this, which is exactly, so the kinds of things that if you're going to make a comment about how it affected you or what it made you think of, and recognize that any comments that are just, gee, that's a really beautiful thing you did, might be better in an email outside the actual experience of the critique or the session, whatever it is.
That's a good way to look at it. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. Thanks for being one of the spurs that's helped me think that through in a new way. Would you like to add anything before we take another comment?
I was just thinking, I don't know if you have specific groups in mind, Linda, but just whoever if there is like a leader / facilitator, maybe having a discussion with them about setting expectations for the feedback, or following some of the guidelines that you discussed. So,
or I think that's the sort of thing where if a group is together, they can talk about how they want to use the time that they have.
Yeah.
because let's face it, groups are always finite when it comes to the amount of time that they're putting into a particular session. And I think it's possible that the whole group could come together with or without a leader per se and decide what will be the most constructive use of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really good.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Joyce.
Yeah, I want to go back to the comment that Cynthia made earlier about confidence as an attitude. And I've always been one of those people that have said that you fake it till you make it. Mm-hmm. And with her saying that, it did change my opinion. And I think about this, and I've been thinking about this. Confidence is an attitude, and it's one that we choose. And it's not always easy, and we don't always choose. What we want to choose isn't always there, but it's kind of like our attitude when it is an attitude. And when we get up in the morning, people used to say to me, how come you're always happy? Well, when I get up in the morning, I choose to be happy. So I think if we start thinking of confidence as an attitude, and we choose to have that attitude, understanding that we're doing the best, we have confidence that we're doing the best that we can in what we have, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thanks. Marilyn, glad you're here. But you're muted. Okay.
I'd like to say two things. On confidence and creativity. Sometimes it's words we use or speak to ourselves that might make a difference. Instead of maybe trying to start with artist, we start with that I am creative, and little steps, because we all are creative and we can use our creativity in 1,000 ways. And that is about self-talk too. I know that I used to march around the block talking and talking to myself and saying, I'm an international artist. That was way before I actually became one. There's only 3 pieces internationally, but I am. And I think we have to give ourselves good words, speak good words to ourselves, and not judge. Put away, we have those judges and as archetypes, put those away. Or if it's your archetype, really dig in and see where the positives and the negatives, because there are both, of course, right? So those are my 2 thoughts.
Those are good points, Marilyn. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Lindsay.
Hi there. Yeah, I'd like to go back to 2 things, but I think they're related. The critique and entering an art show, and what happens. It comes to me to think that even though this might be not practiced or familiar, I think that I have to get clear before I ever submit anything in any venue. Am I ready to hear that I might not get in or not? And am I ready to hear comments from other people? And if I am, then I want to be clear what it is I hope to get. I want to go back to the beginning, I guess, of understanding what's driving my process to get included in a show or get into a show, so that I can be ready for whatever happens. And I might not like it, it might be uncomfortable, but I've prepared myself to understand my reasoning to enter it in the first place. I don't know if that makes sense, but I think getting in touch with myself, with where I'm at a critique or entering a show or whatever, is really valuable. And it helps me be more neutral about what happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Lindsay, because another way that I think of that, which is along the same lines, is that we want to feel less personally attached to what we do. I mean, we need to, maybe I'm not using that in the same context as what you're saying. But I guess seeing it impersonally is what I'm thinking, is that whether you get in or not, if we can keep that sort of in an impersonal context, which once again, for me, that means separating what I make from who I am.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think even in a critique, which I haven't been in too many, but, is to just I've got to be clear about what I'm wanting from the critique. And one way to maybe do that is to think about, well, what is it that I'm curious about what I've done? Am I curious about the colors I picked, or am I really liking the way I lay this out? I mean, I might even be able to say that so that the person that's responding has something to say that's related to what it is I'm hoping to get, rather than, and they might say they love it or whatever, but they've got something to work with if I'm clear about what I'm asking for.
Well, and in the short exchange you and I had earlier this week, if you don't mind me revealing, that you said how much you love bright fluorescent colors.
Yes.
You were going to own it. And I think that's another example of not everyone is going to like that color palette, and it doesn't really matter. You love that color palette and you've owned it. So good for you.
Absolutely. Yes, I think you're right.
I entered a piece in a show a long time ago and it didn't get in. And when I talked to the woman who delivered the work back that didn't get chosen, I was crushed, because I was probably not too much older than Zena. And I said, do you have any idea why I didn't get in? Because I'm thinking, of course, I'm the worst on the planet. Why did I even think of doing this? And she said, yeah, the juror loved purple. And the show had something purple on it. And all I can think now, looking back, is that I wonder if the juror even realized that was true, or whether she was so unaware that she chose the whole show, not even realizing that every single piece had purple on it. So then I started looking at jurors' preferences based on shows that they juried before. And that was when I was still willing to make a piece for a show in order to impress a juror. And I was mildly successful at that, but that's like painting paintings to sell at Kmart to go over sofas. That.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, it took me 67 years to get to the place where I really like fluorescent colors. Like, I know not everybody likes them, but you know what? I really do. And who cares? They just.
And the other thing, little piece of non-reality there, is that everybody around you already knew you liked fluorescent colors. We're just waiting for you to admit it.
Bravo.
It would be hard
Kudos for that.
And that's all of it, I mean, everybody else knows if you have 10 pounds to lose. When are you going to admit it to yourself? That's my story. And it's just one of any number of ways that we just, pull the wool over our own eyes, I guess. And the sooner we're clear about it, the easier it goes. Now, I know we're past one a little bit, but we still have 2 comments. So if you need to go, feel free to leave us, and we're glad you were here. But Ronnie, you've waited a long time.
Good morning, everybody. Just 2 little areas about the conversation. One is how do you become an artist? Well, the first thing is you turn up. And as I've had a conversation via email with Jane about a little theory I use with my classes, Play Now, and each letter stands for a particular word, and so that's a different conversation. But it's being there, turning up, doing the work, even if you're only doing a very simple exercise or a breathing, drawing exercise to start the day in the studio. It's the fact that you're actually there. And part of that is by looking at other things in your life that you can do that are creative, whether it's your cooking or your gardening. It's all part of making you a creative person. But the other part was about critiques and exhibitions. And having spent a lot of this week as a selector for an exhibition we have here, it's a national exhibition, and we have, it's called the Contemporary Textile and Fibre Exhibition, called Changing Threads. So if you look up changing threads, you'll be able to find out about it. But it's using fiber and textiles in the widest sense of the word. So what we don't want is a very traditional, pretty piece to go on the wall. And it's our 13th year of doing it. So it's been an interesting process over the years, encouraging people to realize that we want them to stretch their ideas. So the fiber can be anything from wool and silk to plaited plastics or things, but it has to be conceptual and it has to be well executed. So it's always tricky trying to get people to understand from the written piece that you submit as to what they're actually, what we're wanting them to do. But people are starting to understand. So this week we've done the selection. So we had 180 entries. And from that, we had to then whittle them down to about 48. And when the actual work then comes in, we selected from photographs because it's all over the country. When the actual work comes in, we then take about another 5 or 6 out. And it's a very difficult process that we take very seriously, and I feel very honoured to be doing it every time because people have put their heart into the work they do. So every piece that's submitted, we know is something that means something to that person. So as a selector and one of the judges in the end, I actually treat that very seriously. And I think most of you should know that that work is treated respectfully. But when we start to look at the work has to fulfill the criteria. So it's important when you actually submit work that you are understanding what is being asked of you. But sometimes you open it and you think, oh my God, but you actually have to really look at that work in terms of the exhibition. So occasionally it could be that a piece is absolutely amazing, but it just doesn't fit with that particular exhibition. So that's no denigration of the work itself, or that piece might be absolutely incredible in another exhibition. So as an example of that, we sometimes get pieces which are quilted. So I would say they're quilts. And in a quilt exhibition, yes, they would be stunning and they probably would be, prize winners. But for the terms of the exhibition that we're doing, a lot of them are not conceptual enough. So to say that you did a piece with the idea of it being your family home is not sufficient for this particular exhibition. So my point would be just be very clear on what is being asked of you and how your piece fits into that particular setting of the exhibition. So that's a very clear thing that we have to have as selectors. So hopefully that makes it clear. Thank you.
Yeah, that's helpful. That's very helpful. Thanks for taking time to share that with us, Ronnie. And glad you're up. Glad you're here.
Thank you.
Janice, what a wonderful way to wind down today.
Hi, friends. I wanted to speak specifically to Linda Wingrove's comments and also to my friend Lindsay. You bring up important points, and I hearken back to earlier conversations that we've had with you, Jane, about authentic art and questioning ourselves as to whether or not we're submitting to please the juror, or if we're really submitting art that speaks our own truth and our own story. Therefore, to Linda's point, I'm very careful about who I ask to critique my work. I call myself a fiber artist, but my fiber art doesn't look like anybody else's fiber art. And so if I'm asking somebody to critique it, I have to trust that they know my story and my intent and my meaning of what I'm trying to get across. And the point of submitting would be to put it out to the greater world to have it someone react to it. But as Lindsay said, I must submit it with the knowledge that it may not resonate to others, and it may not resonate with what else is selected for the show. So I think it goes back to I create what I create, and I ask for critique from those who I trust will be honest with me, and that ultimately, if it gets accepted, great. And if it doesn't, that doesn't reflect upon my worth and my creativity. So those are all hard lessons to learn. But again, harkening back to your words, Jane, look at the intent. Why am I creating? And is this authentic to me? So that's my 2 cents worth.
Well, that's a great 2 cents worth to wind up, Janice. Thank you. So I wish I could see everybody on all the screens now, because I want you to say it with me. I am an artist. Ready? I
am an artist.
There you go. Woohoo! That's pretty good. We're going to make a great choir. Well, it's been terrific. Would you like to say anything else?
I loved your comments, Janice.
And the hour went by way too fast, as it always does. Thanks for sticking with us to the last moment here. And we look forward to seeing some of you tomorrow in the simple workshop that I'm leading in the afternoon. And if we have anything else to say, I guess we'll say it, write it. We'll be there. We're here for you. And
Thank you.
Thank you. See you all soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.